We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and today we present all, via this video, a series of facts that are proven established facts that synchronise, evidence or evidences that prove itself evident, and proof which proves itself. All the beginning or origin stories of the original ancient, very old biblical Tab Asheret Old Testament in the sacred scribal language spoken by God to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, etc., the Lishana Artika, as well as today's modern Americanized English translations or interpretations, are of much older, anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 years older, mythos or mythical manuscript tablets in cuneiform, a long dead, no longer written or spoken form of wedge-like language as a script. These were stories told by men of ancient, long dead cultures, copied by hand by scribes and later copyists who strive to not make mistakes in their copy. They had to copy it exact, from probably originating from older pictographs, simple scribbles upon rock, parchments or animal skins, stone tablets, clay-baked tablets, passed on from one culture, picked up, passed on by other cultures that arose after them. Found by archaeologists over the last century or more. All the mythical stories may have come from one people who decided to unite and create one nation with a name, creating a village to start, and then advance to creating a city, then a great empire. These created greater agriculture and became the first full-on agriculturists, farmers, growers, and those who reaped, who decided, or rather realised, it was easier to grow their own food, store all of the harvest in barns, etc., and breed or raise vast amounts of different captured animals, so they didn't have to chase them halfway around the world to be able to eat and fail and near starve to death. These created other amazing things over time that helped advance their intelligence, status, power, etc., raising their survival level to greater heights. At one point in time, in an era, someone arrived at the idea of a pantheon of gods, or a multitude of gods, before someone else arrived at an idea there was only one God, one over all. The original ancient, very old myths from the Sumerians of creation, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Great Deluge or Flood, and so forth, stated details about gods, a pantheon of gods, of many gods, and how they affected and impacted human beings and life. Many of the names like Upanisham, later Atrahasis, etc., became the biblical Na or Noah, and details of the stories were adopted and then adapted and changed in detail by later claimed descendants of the original ancient Sumerians, who were, it said, non-Semites. But these Semites that followed claimed to be descendants of those Sumerians. They were half-breeds. They were a mixture of various tribes, races, peoples known as the Hebrews, Chaldeans, Judeans or Jews, Israelites, etc., wandering nomadic or Arab in that true sense of wandering through a desert, having tents, raising cattle or raising goats and sheep, rams, etc., living in tents and intermarrying, interbreeding. They migrated, invaded, occupied and ruled other people's lands, and thrived, often claiming in later centuries as the original peoples of those lands, the original inhabitants, when they really weren't. To this day, their stories are told and retold. That they wrote down their versions of the much older ancient mythical tales, which, as we mentioned earlier, are adopted and then adapted. Details are changed, added to, etc. Today we have these adapted stories said from the original ancient, very old, long dead languages, from the original manuscripts, etc., or tablets, when in all probability we don't. We only have tiny fragments, not full copies, as stated by known scholar, theologian, agnostic, atheist, but what he's actually referring to is Greek manuscripts. We only have fragments, etc., the size of a cell phone chip or card. That's what he states, not what we state. Translated into the nearest English, or the Americanized, heavy American flavoured transliterations into the English, said to be totally free of errors, contradictions, deliberate editings, etc., said to be the exact words of God, unchanged, when they are blatantly not. Example, Mark 15:34. From the original ancient, hidden, therefore preserved for over 2,000 years, Galilean Aramaic, by the original ancient Apostolic Church of the East, or that which was restored because the original was destroyed around the 13th century. Mark 15:34 is an example that there are errors and contradictions. And in the 9th hour, Joshua, or Jesus, cried out in a loud voice and said, El, El, that's the original name of God, Lamana Shvakhthani. That is my Allah, or my God, wherefore did you destine me? And the translator, Victor N. Alexander, has put in the footnotes below, 1534, okay, we go 1534:1, Aramaic, the verb to be, in the sacred connotation, he is, or supreme being, or I am. So there he's declaring he is God. Part of that triune Godhead, right? He's a member of the triune Godhead. 1534:2, literal Aramaic, Allahi, Allahi. 1534:3, literal Aramaic, El, El, that's the original name of God, Lamana Shvakhthani. This is the correct transliteration of the original words of Ishua, Jesus the Messiah, in Galilean Aramaic. Other transliterations indicate the second and third generation transliterations from Arabic and the Greek versions, interpretation translations. So if you compare that verse with your modern Americanized Bible version, you'll find that it says, my God, which is correct, but it'll say, why have you forsaken me? Remember, in the Old Testament it's written, God will never leave you nor forsake you, so why would he forsake his son? And wherefore implies, in the Aramaic, why have you abandoned me or left me to my destiny? It does not mean forsaken me. Yeah, this Galilean Aramaic New Testament manuscripts were hidden by and therefore preserved for 2,000 years by the original Apostolic Church of the East through to the restored Apostolic Church of the East. These manuscripts, Galilean Aramaic manuscripts, were written down by one or more of the disciples of Jesus and handed out to the high priest of that particular church. And this versus the King James Version or any other version, NIV, ESV in comparison. The latter, as we just stated, is an incorrect transliteration or translation of the original ancient Galilean Aramaic by Jesus from the cross to his Father God in heaven. The Galilean Aramaic NT was translated into the nearest English equivalent by Victor N. Alexander, translator, filmmaker, native-born Mesopotamian speaker, documentary maker, who states in the footnotes of his translation, which we've already read, that my God, why have you forsaken me, is incorrect, and it's a second, third generation transliteration from the Greek Arabic translations. So all readers, preachers, teachers, be they Jewish rabbis, Christian pastors, reverends, evangelists, or everyday street preachers, and Islam's imams and adherents or followers, need to be aware of today's versions, the modern Americanized English translated versions, which are copies of copies of copies, not of the original manuscripts, that they are reading from what's claimed, what's written as the exact written and translated words of God into modern Americanized English, as a tool to discredit, undermine, in favour of the religiosity or belief system. These people will say all these different things about Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, depends on from which religion they're from, and which, if they're trying to show someone else the flaws, to undermine that particular belief system in favour of theirs. They're using it as a tool to discredit, undermine in favour of their religiosity or belief system. They are not preaching the truth, as they claim, not teaching the truth, as they boast. They're actually reading bad transliterations. For one may read one version of many and not knowing exactly what was originally written and meant by the original ancient Eastern disciples or Eastern scribes or monks or copyists, because they don't know that language, they don't know what was originally written and what it means and what they're trying to get across to their readers. So they don't know their language that they spoke and wrote or recorded all in, or also copied all in, the scribes and monks that came later on. And that these are original, ancient, very old, no longer spoken, written, dead languages that very few speak today, and if they do, they're quite an old age, and they don't know English, so they can't translate it for you into nearest English. Okay. So, no longer spoken, written, dead languages, very few speak today, written, spoken via modern versions of those old, dead languages. So, not knowing them, okay, these people have created these modern vernaculars or modern languages, modern versions of that language. So, not knowing those long dead, no longer spoken languages in the manuscripts proves that a person reading latter English, Americanized English versions or interpretations don't know what was originally written, recorded or wrote down and meant. Also, they make use of Eastern idioms, expressions via a Eastern mindset they don't have. These scribes, monks, who are hand copying those original manuscripts, don't know that they have an Eastern mindset, right? They make use of Eastern idioms, expressions, and they have an Eastern mindset that these others don't have. Even with the original ancient, very old cuneiform tablets of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, Chaldeans, the Mesopotamians, and those who spoke the Aramaic, they don't have that mindset of that era. So there lies the truth of the origins of the biblical stories, the adoption and adaptations of the older mythical stories on cuneiform tablets by later claimants professing to be direct descendants of these earlier long-dead cultures, i.e. the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonians, Mesopotamians, etc. And also the claimants who state in their scriptural Bible revised versions that they translated all from the original ancient manuscripts, long-dead languages, into English, the Aramaic, the Hebrew, the Koine Greek, etc. They couldn't have. That's impossible if they're not native-born speakers and understand what those original long-dead ancient manuscript languages actually say. They must use a certain method to translate all correctly into the nearest English equivalent without the common translator's prejudice, bias, twistings, and taking the scriptures and their supposed meaning way out of context, leaving out certain passages or chapters or books even they can't get their head around, or simply just don't believe in what's hinted at there, like the triune God, etc., etc. If you liked this particular video, please subscribe to us, give us a like and add your comments and share it with all you know. Yeah, so in sum, all have to be aware or wary of those who are out there with the latest modern Americanized versions, Americanized English, NIV, ESV, RSV, etc. Because these people will say, well, it's the inerrant word of God, it's what God actually said, there's no contradiction, there's no errors, and so forth, when we, with Mark 15:34 in the original ancient Galilean Aramaic, we proved that when you compare with a modern Bible version, it is very different. So there's an error there, isn't there? There's a contradiction. You're saying that Christ, who's uttering to God in heaven from the cross in his native-born Galilean language, they're translating it as something which he didn't actually, it doesn't actually mean, and he didn't actually say, he didn't utter it like that. It doesn't mean it, right? It's a second, third Arabic, Greek, or Greek Arabic translation or transliteration. So these people out there saying, yeah, this is what he said, this is the truth, we're preaching the truth, etc., etc., they're actually not. They're lying through their teeth. Sometimes they're not conscious of that, but sometimes when you present that to them or expose that, reveal that to them, they get all upset. They get very angry and they start making assumptions, accusations, lies about you, that you're of the devil, or this sort of stuff. That their King James Version from 1611 is superior to manuscripts, cuneiform tablets, all that sort of stuff, right? Which is total nonsense. Okay. If that's the originals, and they've been preserved for centuries, and somebody who knows what they're talking about, a native born speaker of that particular language, or someone who's a highly qualified expert like Irving Finkel, British curator, they really know what they're doing, and they're not going to lie through their teeth, and they present it to you in English, exactly what's written. Those are the people you could probably put your trust in, like we do with the Aramaic translator Victor N. Alexander, native-born Aramaic-speaking translator. He speaks many of the Aramaic dialects, as well as Norwegian, etc. And he's been doing the translation of those Tab Asheret Old Testament manuscripts from 800 BCE, and also the Galilean Aramaic New Testament manuscripts from around the 1st century AD to the 2nd century AD for over 20 years. So he knows what he's talking about. We've tried to catch him up, but we didn't, and we found that he's a very nice, older, humorous man. So we put our trust in him. We did ask him, could we learn the Aramaic that he learned to carry on his work for him, but he said, well, it's kind of hard for Westerners to pick it up and learn it, speak it properly. So just trust his translation. So over time, since about 2017, we've been studying his former website, va.com, which was down, and which we revived, his translation project, and continued to try to catch him up, but again, we never did. So again, we put our full trust in him, as well as looking at people like Messianic Jew, Andrew Gabriel Roth, and Dr. James Francisco, who has 2 doctorates in Aramaic and Hebrew, possibly the Greek. We have asked him, okay, because we did put a comment on underneath one of his videos, would he be proficient and expert in the modern vernacular, the Syriac, the Aramaic, as well as the Greek. And he stated us not long ago that he is translating from the original languages, and we thought, well, that's what Victor and Alexander was doing, so wouldn't they come to the same or near exact translation without adding prejudice, the bias, etc. that most translators are known for. So we're sort of not sure, he hasn't yet replied back to us on that, but we're not really that sure that he actually is. We think he's probably using a modern vernacular. We don't know until he replies back to us. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to watch this, our latest video upload. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's opened your eyes to the tomfoolery, the trickery that's out there, and you'll watch our videos centered around the original ancient Tav Asheret, Lishana Atik Prayer, and also the Galilean Aramaic New Testament translated into the nearest English equivalent by native-born Aramaic speaker Victor N. Alexander, hailing from Mesopotamia, Syria, with over 20 years experience translating those manuscripts from the original Apostolic Church of the East, given to them by the disciple Thomas, who his high priest hid them, therefore preserving them for over 2,000 years.